Today's guest holds a Bachelor of Arts in Law and Psychology, author and specialist in emotional intelligence. Over the past 25 years, she has impacted more than 7,000 executives and families across the country. Today, she's going to share with you new ideas, insights, and information so you can understand your emotions. Would you please help me welcome our good friend, Joie Seldon? Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Now, before you became a specialist in human psychology, what was the dream that you started with and what excited you about that dream?
Well, my first dream was to be a movie star,
Oh,
was to be an actress. And I wanted to be like Katharine Hepburn, who was my idol growing up, watching our old movies on TV, because it was a place where I could live in my imagination and I didn't have to deal with the reality of my life and my circumstances. And it was actually coming to a place with that dream and recognizing that I didn't know what I was doing. I was really very unhappy, quite miserable. And I had an epiphany one day that I was not supposed to be miserable. I actually heard a voice in my head that says, "You're not supposed to be miserable." And I went, well, duh, right? We're not supposed to be unhappy. And so why am I? And why am I here? What's life all about? And that's what sent me on my journey of seeking to understand humanity and why we behave the way we do.
and on your way on that journey, what was some of the personal challenges that you had to overcome? What were some of those obstacles that you had to face?
I had tremendous ambition and big dreams, but I had a lot of internal criticism, self-doubt. I was a perfectionist, as I learned to understand later on. It's because I had a lot of shame. I had a sense or a belief that there was something wrong with me. And so I gave the appearance of being confident, but inward, I was really not confident and I struggled quite a lot.
These voices inside of our head, I remember having a friend. He said, Daniel, one day, he said, I just stopped on the side of the road. I hopped out of my car and I had to scream. "Ah!" I said, what were you doing that for? He said, I had to scream louder than those voices were talking to me. And he said that those voices weren't working for him. They were working against him. And instead of telling him what he could do, they were telling him all the things that he couldn't do. And he said that voice, he just had to start to drown it out because it was so convincing and it
Oh, yeah.
seemed so real.
Right. That inner judge or inner critic. I actually learned a tool when I was in grad school to take that voice that's in your head, the one that's not supporting you, and put it outside of you and personify it. And mine was a school marm, a school teacher with strict, her hair slicked back and her dress up to here and a stick in her hand. And she was like this. And so I would learn to put her out there and say, thank you for sharing. Now I'm going to do my business. Go away.
Well, when I keep doing that, one part looks like my mother and the other one looks like my father. And I go, oh, these angels and these devils,
Yes.
be
Yes.
gone. Now, you specialize in the field of emotional intelligence. How do you describe emotional intelligence? Because I believe today it's a bit of a buzzword. People throw it around and corporates say, we're emotionally intelligent. And leaders say, we're emotionally intelligent. And we say, well, what is it?
Yes.
And they say, well, it's emotional intelligence. Could you tell me a little bit more?
Exactly. Exactly. People like to tout it as, their values, but they don't really understand what it is. What I hear most is people say it's empathy and compassion, and that is a part of it, but that's like a tip of the iceberg. So emotional intelligence is the ability to be present with the full range of your feelings, all of your emotions, to be accepting of them and to be able to understand the message that they're bringing you and then take appropriate and productive action on that. So one of the things I do when I'm speaking is I always ask, if you're talking about emotional intelligence, then what are emotions? And that really stumps people. Feelings, yes, they're feelings, but what is that? So I'll share with my definition of emotions. that they are a biological, meaning body-based, information system. And their purpose is to bring you information about your relationship to whatever it is that you're experiencing. And their different emotions tell you different kinds of information to prompt you to action that is optimally beneficial for your survival and your well-being.
It's interesting that you say accepting of emotions, because I believe people can accept the emotions that they feel are favourable, and then they take the other ones, and I think they just try to push them over there, and they say, just stay there
Right.
for 20 years
Right.
until we know how to deal with you. And those fears come up, and they say, well, I can't accept that fear, and I'm going to put it over there. Oh, but that excitement and that hope when I start to fantasize about what I want, but now I take action, I better put that fear back over there, and I'll just go back to hoping and wanting. Because when I act, that fear, oh, I don't like that one.
Right.
They don't
And
become accepting.
that becomes a big issue. It's what stops people from actually accomplishing things. I always say if I'm going to teach one emotion, it's going to be fear, because we have not only fear of the unknown, we have fear of a lot of things. We have fear of other emotions. So that when you stop yourself from feeling a particular emotion, it's you don't want to feel, people don't want to feel uncomfortable. And we have all kinds of products being sold to us to feel better. But there is so much value in the discomfort of certain emotions because they're bringing you something really important about what you're experiencing.
Interesting that they are forms of communication. And I think sometimes with our left brain, it's very analytical. It's going to talk to you in words. But the unconscious mind, the storehouse of the emotions, is going to talk to you in feelings. And I believe that a lot of people can't connect with the symbology of that feeling. What does it actually mean to me? Why am I feeling it down the front of my body? What does it mean? Why am I feeling that fear down the back of my body?
Yes.
Oh, no, I've got to go to the bathroom. I'm about to do public speaking. I've got to do a pee 5 times. What's my body saying?
Yeah, and that tells you right there that emotions are biological. They're based in the body. But the problem is people give emotions too much power, whether it's the emotion of joy or happiness or the emotion of fear. They give it their power when really they're our servant. They are there to serve us. They're there to bring us the truth of what we're experiencing. And sometimes that truth is what we're projecting onto a situation because of our past experience, because of our traumas and our pains and hurts. And so we project onto what's happening, something that's going to go wrong. And so when we feel the tension of fear, we think something is wrong. But it's not. It's just that you need to pay attention to something that's happening.
I used to work for a leader, and he'd come in every few months and he was jacked up. It was like he was outside and he was pumping himself up with the bike pump. And he'd pump himself up, he'd pump himself up, he'd pump himself up, and he'd come in and say, this is going to be a peak performance month. And he was on this high, and you could feel this elevation and this energy that he brought in the room. But it was a kind of like a nervous energy, an incongruent energy. And he'd be so pumped up that I could feel the emotion behind it and think, this doesn't seem congruent. His words and his emotional energy aren't matching. And he'd be like, this is going to be the best month ever. We're going to have a peak performance month, and we're going to work 7 days a week, and we're going to hit all these results.
Yeah.
And I'd say, what's your goal? Because you still haven't asked me about my goal.
Yeah,
So these
I love that you use
leaders-
the word congruent or incongruent. That's very apropos.
I see a lot of people who say one thing and they do something else. And I believe that emotions we can measure not only just subjectively. In Australia we call it a bullshit meter. Our bullshit meters go off.
Yeah.
We can feel it,
Yes.
but we can also measure it with technology. For executives who have less active emotional intelligence, what are some of the risks for them in the workplace?
The biggest thing that I see is that the leaders are not recognizing what is going on down the chain. So the people who are actually making the business run And it starts from the lowliest, quote unquote, lowliest position, the newbies coming in, when there isn't a safe place for people to have their own emotions, their feelings, because we all have them all the time, to have their personal self to bring in. Say they're doing two things. The disconnect is not really creating a system in which people can express themselves in a safe and healthy way, not to be complaining all the time, but to contribute. Most of my clients, they want to contribute. They want to feel valued and to experience their own value, and they get blocked because there's a disconnect between the upper echelon, the C-suite people, and the mid-level managers, and the mid-level managers are caught between, a rock and a hard place, and then the other people, and then they complain, and then they don't do their best work, or they leave, or, they even sometimes sabotage situations. So they're really losing out financially, and they're also having a negative impact on a lot of people when they're not paying attention.
I've had those leaders before where they say, leave the emotion at home, leave it at the door. I scratch my head and I think, how do I do that? And I would ask them, how do I do that?
Yeah.
Well, just leave it at home. Like, how? How can I leave that part of me at home or at the door?
Yeah.
It's got to come with me. It's my emotional baggage. I'm going to take it wherever I go.
Right.
And when I was an athlete, I had a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear of getting hurt. There was a lot of fear of losing competitions. And I, at some level, thought, yes, this does get in my way. But there was also the other part of it that drove me to excellence. I'm not saying perfection. I'm just saying it drove me to excellence, because I'd say, I'm so afraid to lose, but that fear can be my fuel to practice harder.
Yes.
To go back and sit down and review my mistakes via video and figure out where I can correct it. And then to go to the trampoline in the early morning, in the late night, and then practice more on the weekend. And that fear drove me away from losing and towards excellence. And so I felt when I embraced it, I could use it effectively, but it took a long time to figure out that it just wasn't all bad about the fear.
Right.
It could actually serve you.
Exactly. All emotions serve you. And we have a lot of languaging that labels them negative. This is a negative emotion, and this is a positive emotion. And that is one of the key sticking points that causes a lot of issues. And so to recognize that the emotion itself is not negative. It's the repression or denial or being overwhelmed by it that causes a negative result. The emotion itself is bringing you vital information. I did the same thing with anger. I had all this repressed anger, and I would get into a situation where I felt hopeless or down, and I would then use my anger to say, now I'm not going to stay down. I'm not going to stay in this place. This is not the life I'm choosing. And I would use that anger to motivate me and fuel me to get over myself in a way, to get over my fears and my insecurities and move forward. So all emotions there are repressed versions that cause negativity, but the emotions themselves all have value.
I think they do. I remember experiencing those negative emotions as they'd be labelled. 6 gangsters jump out of a car and they beat me up, and they had cricket bats and cricket stumps. Well, you'd call them baseball bats. And they attacked me. And so the emotion of fear came up. That was the first thing. I'm scared, but I can't deny it. Well, Daniel, you shouldn't be scared. These 6 guys, you should just use affirmations and they might go away. That'd be stupidity. So the fear kicked in, and the first thing that I responded was with anger. And I had to fight back.
Yes.
And then once the anger served its purpose, again, I felt fear, but the flight response came in.
Yes.
And it was like all the blood drained away from the head, and it went straight down to those big muscles in the leg.
Yes.
And I ran so fast that I didn't even know how far. I must have been going 100 kilometres an hour. But I'll tell you what, I was going down the street, and my shoes or my thongs that I was wearing, I was running so fast that they fell off. And I was running so fast along the road that I couldn't even feel the pain. And then I jumped in the bush and I hid. And those negative emotions saved my life.
That is fight or flight. That is, fear and anger are our protector emotions. We need them. It's very important to have them. And so for situations like that, and so that it goes to the major muscle groups, to all that blood goes you're exactly right. And it goes away from the viscera, from your organs. So if you do get injured, you bleed less. Where a body is an amazing thing. And so you were doing exactly the right thing. The problem is in the day-to-day interactions that we have so often in the workplace, where somebody says something and you feel the spark come up, and it's akin to the fight or flight, but it's not that important. Your life is not going to be threatened. And so one of the things that's helpful is to say, am I going to die if I speak up, or am I going to die if this happens? No, I'm not going to die. And you can learn to actually calm your body to send a message to your brain that says, I'm safe. And that can help you get through a lot of situations.
I think for a lot of people who are in business or are wanting to start their own business, they realise that sales is going to come with a lot of no's. And that word no is going to trigger off that fear of rejection. And for my experience, when the 6 gangsters come out and beat me up, in their mind, they probably feel like the no, like those 6 baseball bats coming at them. And it's triggering off the fight, flight, or freeze response. And a lot of them end up freezing, and they don't even pick up the phone. They don't return the emails. They don't go and prospect. I even remember coaching real estate agents, and they wouldn't even go and speak to a possible customer who stood at the window, because inside of them they thought, what if they say no? What if they reject me? Now, where can I run? Am I allowed to get angry? Oh, I can't get angry at them. I can't tell them to jack off, piss off. I've got to stay. Right. And I believe that can be quite frightening. So for executives who start to become more active with emotional intelligence, what are some of the rewards that they have for becoming more active with emotional intelligence?
One of the biggest rewards is access to more possibilities, and really your intuition, your understanding of what is the best possible choice. My goal is always to help people understand they have more choice than they think they do. So when we get into that freeze or that fear state, or we stop ourselves, we're stopping the momentum of creativity, of creation. You know, everything is about creativity if you're accomplishing something in business, but it gets stuck in these protocols, or it gets stuck in these rigid ways of thinking about something. And so if you have a challenge or a problem, the more present you can stay and open, your perspective broadens, and you're open to finding the right kind of help. Ideas come that wouldn't have come if you're fixated on whatever that emotion is that's keeping you stuck, or you're fixated on the problem. I've had this amazing shifts and changes throughout my life because I was willing to stay present with the emotions, no matter how uncomfortable. And then some idea would come, and it would be, wow. And it help me accomplish a lot. So they're limiting themselves if they don't do that.
I speak to a lot of doctors, and I've never heard a doctor say that a child's born and they're a natural born emotionally intelligent person. This one is emotionally intelligent, this one's not. This one can't learn it, this one will. So would it be fair to say that emotional intelligence is not an inborn attribute, and it's something that we all have to learn along the way?
I think, and that's a very interesting question, because, you know, in the end, who knows? I do think that children have a far greater capacity to be emotionally intelligent when they're interacted with in an emotionally intelligent way. The issues that we deal with around emotions all comes from outside conditioning. What we observe in our families, what we're told by the families. I was told to be seen and not heard as a child, so that immediately started stuffing all my feelings. I grew up extremely shy, and I'm not at all shy now. So that was a condition that developed because of the way that I was treated, and there was a great lack of intimacy in my family. So again, I turned inward and became an extreme introvert growing up. So I think children have the capacity to be innately emotionally intelligent. They just need the environment in order to develop that as they become more cognitively aware, as they're thinking, and their verbal skills and all of that improves.
It's interesting those first 7 years, that imprint period, because parents who repress the emotions are inadvertently teaching their children to repress them. Those parents who express them without constraints are also teaching their children this is how you express the emotion, but also at times with no limits, with the screaming, the shouting, the hitting, the cursing.
Yeah. And we carry that all in our unconscious, in our body too, in the cells of our body. That's why I became a somatic therapist. I got my degree in somatic counseling psychology because it connects us with our bodies. We're embodied beings. So trauma and all the experiences happen in the body. And sometimes when they happen really young, we can't access them intellectually, but we can always access them through amazing different ways within the body.
I think we live in very, what would I say, very prosperous times in terms of the mind. We have tools, we have technologies, we have, we can even say thousands of years of studies into why people are more successful than others. And we have reach globally now to have talk therapy, emotional type therapies. I think we're very blessed in this day and age. And even during COVID-19, I've seen with my customers, they're actually reaching out and saying, because we've been sitting down for so long in one place, we look in the mirror and we don't like what we see. And, all that busyness of the world was taken away for a while, and they actually had to sit with themselves. And as they sat with themselves, they went, oh, what's that? Oh, guilt. Oh, hurt. Oh, the pain. Get me out.
Yes, and people are afraid of the pain, but when you are willing to be with it, you always move through it. Emotions are energy in motion. Emotere is the root word of emotions. It means to move out. And so when you can, the foundation of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. It's self-awareness, then I don't like to say management. I used to always say management because it's self-actualization around your own emotions. But it starts with that awareness and that willingness to feel it. I always say that's my greatest gift. I was willing to feel the full range of my emotions, and I made tremendous transformations because of that. They will move on, and you'll become more and more joyful. And in fact, joy is not the absence of other emotions. Joy is the emotion of connection. So when you're connected to the truth of yourself, when you're connected with that feeling, whether it's the grief of the loss or the fear of not getting something you really want, when you're in truth about that with yourself, then there is a kind of joy aspect to that that's very fulfilling.
Self-management, self-regulation. I like the word self-regulation, and I met a gentleman recently, and he said, Daniel, I'm leaving my job. And I said, well done. I said, have you done it yet? He said, I've been leaving for 15 years. And I was like, linguistically, what does that mean? And I said, you left 15 years ago? And he said, no, I've been leaving for 15 years. And I said, that's a long time to leave a job. He said, I know. He said, I'm scared. And I said, interesting. And I said, are you scared or something else? And I believe what happens for a lot of people is they feel the emotion, and it only lasts for a very short period of time. But then they can get stuck in that mood. And that's where the regulation is so important, is that you've got to, we're all going to get into a stuck spot, but we've got to be able to get out of that.
Right.
So I think of self-regulation as the ability to get out of any mental or emotional rut that you find yourself in. And his emotional rut was 15 years.
Yeah.
and he hadn't managed or regulated the emotion. And then when it came to that mood or that stuck spot or the rut, he still wasn't able to get out of it for 15 years.
Right. I actually learned an exercise years ago that I teach, the emotional spiral or the emotional fluidity exercise, where I have people actually practice moving through. There are 4 in my book and 7 in my system of moving through the emotions and actually pretending like you're a kid to act them out, to express them, so that you kind of train your body to recognize, oh, I can feel this, and then move on. And it is our thinking that keeps us stuck. It's not the emotion itself. You're right. They come and they go quickly. Sadness can linger for a while. You have a major loss. That's understandable. But we get stuck in our mind and our thinking. And when you do that, the emotion it's really an old energy that's happening. It's not something fresh. That's a long time.
I've noticed a lot of people, their emotional vocabulary is limited. And so in Australia, in America, in the United Kingdom, we ask somebody, how do you feel? And nobody tells you how they feel. They give you a construct or a concept. They say, I feel good. Well, on my emotional chart, there's no emotion of good.
Yes.
So how do you feel? And it's very limited. And what I've come to learn over the years is if you can't name it, you can't tame it. If you don't have the awareness of it, it's impossible to regulate it. And I believe as we start to learn more about emotions, we've got to increase that emotional vocabulary. So I know the difference between anger, frustration, and rage. Because if I call it something that it's not, I can't regulate it. And I worked with a person years ago and they said, Daniel, I'm so excited. And I said, wonderful. And are you getting the results that you want? Oh, no. And I said, well, maybe the emotion of excitement is not what you're really feeling. And I said, what would you really be feeling? And they said, excitement. And I said, well, if you're feeling excited, wouldn't you be getting the results that you wanted? And they thought about it, and I asked them, where do you feel excitement in your body? And they pointed just here, just at the top of the chest. And they said, well, that's where I feel excitement. And it's okay. And where do you feel anxiety? And they pointed right down here at the bottom of their stomach. And I said, now, when you go out to do your thing, where do you feel that? And they went, oh, I'm anxious. But as soon as they were aware that it was anxiety, then they could regulate it. And once they regulated it, they got the result they wanted.
That's it. Very, very good. Because, yes, exactly right. Each emotion has a vibration, and sometimes it's very little, and sometimes it's really intense. That's rage and annoyance. We have full range, and the body is going to tell you exactly right. And fear and excitement are on the same continuum, but fear is contracting and excitement is outward moving. They activate very similar parts of the body, the autonomic nervous system that runs from the brainstem down through the vagus nerve to all your organs. It is a very instrumental in the regulation of all your emotions. So when you can name it, there's something in your whole being that goes, yes, bingo, that's it. And then you can move on. And so you're absolutely right. And it's a big part of my work with people is helping them to name it, and to name it specifically, not just I'm anxious. Well, what does that mean? Are you fearful? Are you angry? Are you, is there some shame in there? What's that comprised of? Because anxiety is a general term, as you've recognized. It's the specific of the emotion. The more you can really name it and know what that is, that's where you have the power to make all the changes.
And it's a cocktail, isn't it? It doesn't seem to be just one emotion. It could be anger and guilt. It could be sadness and hurt.
Yes.
All in one cocktail, plus everything else.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why it's really helpful to understand what the specific core emotions are. What is their inherent message? When you feel loss, you might have some anger that goes along with that loss, but you will also have some grief. So a lot of people will just think, oh, well, I should be sad about this loss, but there might be guilt in there or shame.
I
Positive, and there's a
should be
difference between
sad.
healthy shame. I had a woman after I spoke once come to me and said, her mother died. She said, I so appreciate what you said, because everybody kept coming to her and saying, oh, you must be so sad. You must be devastated. And she said, I had a long and healthy relationship with my mother. We were very conscious about her passing, that she was going to die. She was okay with it. I was present with it. And I feel a lot of gratitude, and I'm not grieving. And people didn't want to accept that in her. But she knew that that's what her true feelings were. So
Those societal constraints. You should
we
be
like
sad.
to tell other people what
You'll be grieving for years. It's
or
like a
don't
command.
feel that bad. Get over it. I'll move on.
And I like what you said there, because there's a lot of people who are at peace with their parents when they pass away. They've had good times, and they don't need to feel sad. They can feel a lot of joy, and they can also celebrate that person's life. I think because of Hollywood and many of these platforms, that when somebody dies, we've all got to be depressed. We've got to grieve for months and everything's got to become dark. Why does it have to be like that? This person may have had a huge impact. It's like when my mentors have passed away. I don't feel sad. I feel damn lucky that they were a part of my life, and I celebrate them when I do my work. And I think, wow, that part still lives within me. And if that part's going to be in me, can't I just choose to be happy? Why do I have to choose to be sad?
Yeah. People like to, well, as we can see in the world, they like to believe that they know what's right for other people. And we only know what's right for ourselves.
So true. Over the years, you've created a method called the Joy Method. What does Joy stand for, and how can we start to apply this?
It stands for the joy of integrated emotions. My name is spelled Joie, so I was like, well, let me just see what I can do with that. But it is about integrating the emotions so that they're an innate, organic part of yourself. We get very compartmentalized. And so there are 7 emotions in this, ones that my own experience and a lot of study and that I believe we're hardwired for. They're innate in all of us, and it's our common language. It's really the universal language, no matter what your culture is. We all have experienced sadness and fear. So it's sadness, healthy shame, which is different than toxic shame. Healthy shame is remorse. It's our internal moral compass that tells us that we've done something wrong. We've gone against our own integrity. We've hurt somebody's feelings, and we own it. We feel bad about it. So there's healthy shame, or fear, disgust, which is moving us away from something that's toxic to us, anger, and passion, which is the emotion of creativity, and joy, which is the emotion of connection. So it's based on these 7 emotions, and it's how to experience them in your body, how to process them appropriately in a healthy way, how to communicate with other people, so that people get defensive very easily. So how do you talk to somebody when you want to share difficult feelings, difficult truths, without making them defensive, so that you can really connect? I think the thing that so often gets in our way of disconnecting us, where we get defensive and conflicting, we actually could connect with each other when we recognize our shared feelings.
I believe it's so important for us to be able to express those feelings. And it reminds me of a story of a client many years ago. And I said to her, do you ever feel anger? And she says, yes. And I said, when did you feel anger? She said, today. And I said, what happened? She said, somebody trod on my foot with a stiletto. And I said, what did you do? She said, nothing. I said, so somebody was standing on your foot with their stiletto from their high heel and you did nothing. I said, that's got to hurt, because there's more pounds and there's more pressure per square inch with that heel than an elephant's foot. She says, I know, it hurt. And I said, well, did you push them away? Because normally when we're angry, we want to push.
Yes.
And I said, did you push? She said, no. I said, what did you do? She said, I stood there. And I said, how is it possible that you could stand there with that pain? She said, I didn't know what to say. So she's feeling the anger. And what you're saying here, she can't express it. She can't verbalize it. So she's just got to stand there in pain. Wow.
That's an interesting story. One of the things that helps us, when you get in subatomic particles, there's vibration. There's no matter. When you get into physics, and the bottom line is that everything is made up of energy. And so we have energy, that we have a life force. Something animates us, and that life force emanates out from us. And we can actually use that life force energy consciously, with intention, to create a safe space for ourselves. Anger, in fact, is a boundary setter. When your life's not threatened, anger's core message is, no, this is not okay with me. It's a way to set a boundary. And so we can actually create a sense of energetic boundaries that keep, not only to keep negativity out, but to create a space in which we can function on a level where we have access to our highest intelligence. So when you have things that happen, we can actually work with putting our energy out before the words, and then we can think more clearly to say the words. I think I might have given her a little shove, maybe myself.
I know what I would have done.
Excuse me. But and it's very interesting. I had a client just recently that came to me and thinking that she was angry at her boss. She was ready to leave. She didn't know what she wanted to do. She was working directly with the CEO, and she thought she was angry. And when we did the emotion education, because I always start clients with the emotion education, she realized I have fear. And she started to really work with that understanding, that recognizing what the difference was and when she was feeling when. And then we did role plays of practicing how to approach her boss to talk to him, because she didn't like the way he talked to her. And she had a conversation, and he totally got it. And everything shifted, except that she was new in her role. She was given 5 different things to be ahead of. And she said, it's too much. So learning what she did about how to communicate, she went back to him and talked to him about too many different things that she was head of. And in the end, he knocked all but one, the one she really wanted to focus on, off, asked her what title she wanted, and hired somebody else to take over the things that she didn't want to be doing anymore. All because she was able to recognize her feelings, understand them, learn how to communicate, and take action.
Incredible. Such an amazing transformation. Now, I know a lot of people will start to, just as a result of this conversation, they're going to start to feel different emotions, because I believe that emotions are more contagious than COVID. And when you start to hear these stories of other people's anger, something happens inside. You start to hear other people's stories of fear. Something starts to move around. You touch the sadness button or the guilt or the hurt button, they go, ah! So for people who are now starting to become more aware of their emotions, when they come to your website, where should they start their journey, and what can we take away from the website?
They can schedule a call with me. I offer free half-hour consultations. We can look at, what is the main issue? What are they struggling with? Where do they feel stuck? And have a conversation and really get into a little bit of the work so they can understand my style of working. And they can also get a free download on my website, how to prepare for a difficult conversation, so that they can get a series of steps, very simple. And then there's an audio that comes with that, where I actually walk them through the energetic boundary piece that I was just mentioning, how that they can create their own energetic boundaries. So those are 2 really great ways to connect with me.
So what I want you to do now is I want you to go over to the website, joyseldon.com, schedule a call, and also download the 5 steps to prepare for difficult conversations. And if money's important to you, which, hey, it's important to me. Good thing about emotional intelligence is that emotionally intelligent people, on average, earn around about $37,500 per year more than other people. And this holds true in every country, in every region, in every industry. And it's not something that we've learned today. It's something that we've been learning about over the past 20 years. We've also learned that just as little as a 1-point improvement in your level of emotional quotient can see a $1,350 per year increase. Now, emotional intelligence is also fluid. It's not stuck. Your IQ was set maybe around about 15, but your emotional intelligence is fluid. So what that means is that you can learn and develop these skills over the years, and you can become more emotionally intelligent. And there's actually no upper or lower limits, and you can keep learning about your emotions. And I believe one of the most important things is to have those difficult conversations. If you want to be a leader, if you want to have an impact, if you want to leave a legacy, you got to have those difficult conversations.
It's crucial. It's key, and it was life-changing for me to learn how to speak up and have my own difficult conversations. And I have a course, so if you come in and do the consultation for a call, we can talk about what's right for you. There's the course, there's the book, there's coaching. There are different ways, different levels of getting involved. But I would encourage people to educate yourself. I like to say I'm an emotion educator because it's an area that we really don't get educated enough about.
So true. My parents never sat me down on their knee and said, well, son, this is how we deal with emotions. Something just flew across the kitchen. Or somebody drove out in the car and took off and didn't come back.
But you've learned, I can tell, I mean, the way you speak about it, it's just wonderful to hear the way that you talk about it and how you relate it on such a practical level to our day-to-day life. It's fabulous.
Well, I love this topic, and I remember we were in the pawnbroking business. And we would have never have called it emotional intelligence back in the 90s, back in the 2000s. What we would have called it was being street smart. So in the pawnbroking business, you had to be able to read the emotional makeup of other people. You had to make a value judgment within, was this deal legitimate? Okay, this person with a Victorian ring worth $30,000 and their T-shirt's worth about $2 and they look like they need a fix? No, that's not a good deal. So we had to be able to read the emotions of other people. And people came in from all walks of life, and we had to be able to quickly read them and adjust, because people would come in the morning and they might borrow $10,000 and they might get a loan on their Rolex. And then in the afternoon, they could come and get the Rolex back and spend another $5,000. So we always had to have that gauge on the emotions. Okay, what's happening here? So we used to just call it being street smart.
Yeah.
But I think today with developments like in emotional intelligence, emotional quotient assessments, and all the knowledge with people like yourself around the world, is we can actually start to put it in a box, to say, it's not the best word, but we can put it in a box so we can start to categorize it. Okay, that's self-awareness. That's self-regulation, that's social awareness, and that's social regulation. Okay, now I just got to improve in these areas.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. There's something specific and substantial. They're not ethereal. Emotions are not intangible. They're really quite tangible.
And every professional speaker, every really good leader knows how to move the emotions of other people. But it also, in my mind, presupposes that you have to know about your own emotions first. And, I love what you said at the start. People think it's just about empathy. Well, empathy tends to do with other people, but what about self-empathy? If I can't feel anger inside of myself, how can I identify it in somebody else?
Right.
And it's like that leader who's never picked up the telephone call, who's never faced rejection. Just go out there. Just leave the emotions at the door. Bro, do you know what it feels like copping those bullets every day? Do you know what fear of rejection feels like? Do you know what anticipation feels like? If you don't know it, how are you going to lead me?
If you leave them at the door, you might as well be a robot. You might as well have a robot there, because you don't have humanity. You don't have a human being. And it's self-awareness is the bottom line, and then self-regulation, then social other awareness and other regulation. It builds up. It's not a linear process. It's one that, and each time you accomplish something, each time you have that difficult conversation, you learn from it. It gets easier, but you do it with different people, and you understand people respond differently. And so that reading people is another beautiful aspect of it, to recognize, with this person, it's not going to work for me to be just straight up with them, but somebody else, they're going to prefer me being just straight up with them about what's going on. So that reading people is another, it's fascinating and it's fun. I actually experience more joy and more fun in my life now because of all of the stuff that I've been through and been willing to feel all of my emotions around it. So
one experience that I'll share is I had a girlfriend many years ago, and I like to watch people. I'm a people watcher. I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's this person doing? Where are they going? What's their intention? What's the interaction with the other person? Do they have rapport? Do they have no rapport? And people really fascinate me. So I'd watch these people in the shopping centre. I'd watch them on the aircraft. I'd watch them in the airport. And I'd constantly get this elbow, what are you doing? Stop perving on other people. I said, perving? I said, I'm just fascinated in human psychology to see how people interact. And you can start to predict what people are going to do next. You can watch their reactions. You can see those chain reactions taking place. And you say, I know exactly what's going to happen. I said to my wife the other day, I said, this person's done A, B, and C. And I said, when we see A, B, C, you can expect D is going to happen over here. And I said, this person's going to do this as the next move. And she laughed at me and I said, you just wait, you give me 24 hours. And she got the email later on and I said, that's exactly what I said the day before, because you can start to see those patterns of behaviours.
Yes.
And it's not just isolated to that person. You can start to see it in others if you have that sensory acuity and that sensory awareness to watch what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Life gets really exciting.
Fascinating. That's a really great way for you to learn about yourself. You want to know yourself? Look at the patterns in your life, the patterns of your own behavior, the patterns of your experiences. They're a gold mine for understanding what the dynamics are that are in you. And then when you have awareness of it, I in my journey of learning how to deal with my anger, my immediate reaction was just like, I can get angry really quickly. And I would be really angry. When I really learned the difference between clean anger and defensive anger, and then I would start to get angry and I go, oh, this is defensive anger. This is my pattern. When I feel powerless, that's my reaction, is to get angry. And so I was able to shift how it is that I responded. And I still will get angry, but I rarely get that kind of charge about something. And when I do, I immediately catch myself, because I don't want to spend time hanging out in that energy. If I need the anger to set a boundary, to get something done or to have something happen, I will use that, but in a clean way.
Sounds like you've cleaned out that gestalt. Great conversation.
A lot of years. I'm 73 now, so. And it's good for your health, by the way.
It is, isn't it? There's something that I learned many years ago, is that people with a lower level of self-awareness, they're more susceptible to disease, and it takes them a lot longer to recover from an operation. Also, during an operation, people with lower levels of self-awareness, they tend to bleed more post-op. Wow. So there's some great benefits to the health as well. And as you were talking about somatic therapy before, one topic I discuss with my students is psychosomatic illness, where the mind makes the body sick. And I have been so angry in the past, so hot-headed. I've had an emotional hijack. I can't think rationally. And then 2 weeks later, I end up with a flu. And I'm thinking, who breathed on me yesterday? But 2 weeks ago, the pattern's there, the anger, the body becomes toxic. You clench up. You want to hit something. You can't hit something. You feel attacked. You want to stomp your feet on the ground, but there's neighbours downstairs. You want to scream, but there's neighbours next door. You want to punch somebody, but only my wife's home, so I can't do that. So, and I can't get to the gym, and the toxicity builds up.
It does build up.
And then it gets trapped.
Yes,
and then you get
it's
sick.
not that you got angry in the first place, because I get angry often but I don't stay in that state. I deal
Mm,
with whatever it is, and
mm,
I'm very healthy.
mm.
I've
Yeah,
even had
that's
my brain health tested. I've had my all my body chemistry tested, and the lab said, "Who is this woman? She has some of the best brain chemistry we've ever seen." And my health coach that I was working with said, "Well, she teaches emotional intelligence." So all I can say, it's good for your brain.
there we go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to go over to the website joyseldon.com. I'll put the link in the show notes below. Schedule in your call and learn how to master your emotions so you can start to meet the challenges of today's world. And remember, there's a difference between surviving and thriving, and once you learn to master those emotions, you can start to thrive. So, Joy, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your many years of wisdoms and insights, knowledge, education. We loved it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I loved it too.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, remember, one new idea at the right time is enough to change your life. Head to joyseldon.com today, and I'll see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, Joy.